I just want to say thank you to our sponsors again, as you probably heard it multiple times. So thank you to our sponsors for today. It's already recording, so we're good. So today I'm going to be talking about building the foundation, essential blocks for your Drupal theme. So we're going to go over what kind of blocks is good to remind yourself when you're retheming or you're looking at theming your site, or even just looking at what you have with your site and you want to improve it. So, hi, my name is Melissa. I am the web designer at Coldfront. I've been at Coldfront for 6 years now. Yeah, I think we're 7. That's a blur. So let's dive into what is a component library. So a component library is essentially, there's kind of 2 versions. You can have a coded version, which has a live version of your components of your site, or you can have a mock-up version. So this is really great, attaching it to your branding guideline. So if you want to keep that together, essentially it goes over a lot of basic blocks of what your site should look like. So yeah, and a lot in the components library, you'll have different categories, which you'll have your identity, elements, components, compositions, and layouts. So we're going to dive into each of these categories. Well, why would you want to use a component library? So it kind of boils down to you're able to focus on specific elements of the site in smaller bite size for your clients, so you can review and work on smaller tailored components. And as you keep building this component library, it basically makes up your site. And all you have to do is grab blocks and build your site like a puzzle, or like playing with Legos. You're just blocking it together and you have your site. So this is a great way to get a focus on what kind of direction you want to go for your theme and how you want to approach a redesign. And so if you're doing the web version, you can have the full interactivity before it's actually implemented on the site. So you can know right away, this is not working, I don't like the hover state, and that kind of thing. So your client can also go in and test it out and be like, I don't like this, I don't like that, and it's really easy to do prior to the full implementation of everything. And then once you have those kind of bite-sized blocks, you can create a full mock-up, and it's really easy to move your things around, and you have an overall sense of how your site is going to feel without the heavy load of creating a full mock-up. So you would start a component library when you're about to either start a review or sorry, not a review, but a refresh. So if you're about to refresh your site, it's good to kind of look at a component library is almost like a stepping stone into the mock-ups. So also when you're about to consider a component library, it's great to know what's already on your site. So when you're going into your components library, you know what you're about to build. And then this is a great way too to see if your content is still relevant. Do you want to keep specific blocks on your new site or your refresh? Does it need a specific block? So you can transform those blocks into something else before implementing everything. So the first category is your identity. So your identity will have your header, your navigation sections. Navigation can be seen also in a components. But if there's specific branding that you want to add to your navigation, it's always good to add in the identity phase. So all your typography, figuring out what kind of type are you going to have, because that plays a huge part as well of how your content is going to be showcased. Your colors, your branding colors are always, one of the first things that clients tend to gravitate. How you can implement those colors through your components. So if there's colors, for examples, that like yellow doesn't usually pass accessibility, so you can create a component with accents of yellows, and that just shows the client how you can add those colors that are not super accessible, that you can't really use on like fonts and stuff like that. So, and your footer and your iconography. So that's always good to have beforehand. So I'm just gonna go, these are just examples. So we have the navigation, and then you have your typography. So a nice blurb, a lengthy blurb with all the different styles that you can find. So your bold, your italics, and then all your heading levels. So these are just examples. So it's great to see how those headings are going to behave with each other, because sometimes you'll have a lot of colors and headings, and then when you actually go to put the content together, you're like, those colors don't work together. So this is a really good overview of what they're going to look like side by side. Because sometimes this looks great, and then when you bring it to content, it doesn't have the same effect that you were wanting. So you have an overview of how that looks like. And then your colors. So this is a great way to have all the different colors available, and how this is set up is we know that the primary 100 and 200 can only have black text, and then the rest have to have white text to pass accessibility, and so forth. So that continues. You have as many or as little colors, but it's however many colors you have. It's great to have different shades so you can play with those shades while you're retheming. And then goes in, then there's a shade section. So you can have all the different grays already laid out. So if you have a developer, they'll know exactly what hex code you have, or they'll know how to like color. It's not going to be any guessing game. They'll know what that color is, and they use it. So again, it would just be like setting up your footer. I know it's almost like a full mock-up that you're essentially going to be making. So you're prepping all those sections, and again, just in bite size for the client to be able to see how this is going to look before it's actually implemented. And then the icons are great as well to figure out before, because then there's so many different styles of icons. So nailing that down before, then you know how that's going to appear with everything, and you have, again, an overview of how everything works together. So in the elements, so this is kind of more the funner part, because you get to really play with the different elements. So we have accordions, buttons, links, quotes, and forms. And this is by no means like that's it. You can add as many elements as you want, whatever fits, whatever works best with what you're trying to showcase. But these are kind of like out of the box, the things that you tend to see more often. So you have your accordions. Sometimes some clients don't want them touching at all. So sometimes you want them spaced out. Maybe they don't want an arrow and they want a plus sign, or maybe, so it's great to be able to create that before and have them really narrow down on that component or that element, and not be overwhelmed with the sheer amount of a whole page mock-up will have. Same thing with buttons. So having all the different styles of buttons. So then whenever someone new is coming along styling, they're like, I don't know what kind of color I can pick, or what's the combination I can do, or you'll have that all nicely laid out, and so they'll know your primary button is supposed to look like this. Do you want outline? Do you want to give the option of an outline? So those are just showing what you can use. And then links. So you have all of your different links and how they appear in a paragraph or on its own. So there's the external links, internal links, download emails. So having those icons just shows us that we know exactly what that link is going to bring us. And then the quotes. So just having a basic quote. This is a very, very basic quote styling. But I have another client that has like a really nice icon with the quote. So it's like bringing that in and showing them that, hey, this is what your quote's going to look like. And then you can have elements. Forms are great also to start styling prior. So once you style the element of the form first, they kind of apply everywhere. So, and then I think I forgot to rename. No components. Okay. No, it's good. Okay. So now you have your different components. So I feel like I said that. Okay, that's fine. So then your different components, you could have alerts. So also figuring out if you're going to have a very in-depth alerts, and this kind of goes also back to what does the client want? What does the site? What's the purpose of the site? And are these alerts purely just a notification, like in a form? Do you need more details to it? So having those examples in before it's implemented is great to just know how that's going to be styled. And again, just a header, how the treatment of the headers are going to be, if there's any navigation, is there text on top? So And then cards. This is a great one too. Like, this is like one of the most amazing thing to do because you can have so many different cards. They can vary. These are just 3, but there's easily like 6 different types of cards that you can have. You can have features, and just showing how a vertical card will look like opposed to a horizontal card makes a huge difference for your mobile accessibility. When you're going to mobile, you'll know exactly what that's going to look like when it swaps over. Oh. Okay, that was not supposed to be like that. Is this bold? No. Okay. Okay. That's a call to action. Okay, so compositions is a bit more in a kind of a gray area where it's just basically multiple components together. So for an example, it's how is a grouping of cards going to behave? You can see that with forms. So just showing a grouping of components or elements together and how they're supposed to behave together. So showcasing that prior, that basically lays out a really large section of, you know, if you have related news or other features or like a blog section, this you can be like, there's only going to be 3 at a time, and so 3, 3, 3. So you kind of start fixing that kind of, it's really like molding a lot of the pages before. So it's really great to figure those details out. And then layout, I didn't do any pictures for these because they're pretty explanatory too. You have your one column, but you can figure out in a sense how those are going to look like or behave or what you're going to need. So do you need a 50-50%? Do you need a 75 or 25%? And also knowing your container size, because you could have those really long full page sites, or do you want the more contained? So knowing that kind of specific of what you're going for your theme, it's a great way to kind of start making yourself think about it. Will I need that? And that changes quite a bit of your design. If you have full width, your texts are most likely going to be larger, your elements are going to be bigger, versus if it's more container size, you're looking at, you know, reducing a little bit of things. And then just don't forget, there's a lot of other elements too, like your carousels, your paginations, breadcrumbs if you have them, having tab styles. So it's just adding more to your library. It's literally the library, how everything's going to look once it's all styled and set up. So those are just key, a few other things that you can to get styled and figure out what the client is looking for. So would a component library work for me? So the answer is always yes, but there are exceptions in the sense that if your client is looking for just tweaks or a new page and the theme is already done, they don't want you to change the theme, but they want you to create a new page with a more specific section, that makes sense. But if you were looking for a refresher, adding this library as a branding kind of guideline, like, hey, we want to make sure this site continues to look like this. If you have sub-sites or microsites or however, you can have that as like a baseline of this is what it's supposed to look like. Let's keep it to our branding. And like I said, you can always have a design like in Mockup or in XD as like a base, or you can have it fully fleshed out on your Drupal site with the UI pattern. So there's modules that you can install. It's called UI pattern. I don't want to get too much into it because it's a whole other thing, but you can really like have that set up, and it has more of that interactivity with a client that can go in and test it out and feel how those components feel together, the button hovers and all that. So that's it for that. Yeah, that's it. So is there any questions?